This is Old Electronics Fan, and this is a video that I should have made when I first restored this BSR turntable. I mentioned this model number before, but I'll do it again. It's the UA15SSA-3D. I'm also getting into this because one of the control levers, which I'll show you shortly, isn't moving freely. So when I got this thing, it was not in good shape. It was gummed up. Nothing really seemed to want to move. Well, over here, whoops, there's a pin. Yeah, right there. Oh, come on. See a little silver pin right there? That was missing. Now somebody had taken the broken piece out of here, and obviously they were intending to fix it, but they never did. This pin is important. What this pin does is, when you have records on your turntable, this pin's in the air and it's not doing anything. And of course I've got this thing sitting too close to the tape, so I can't show you what I need to. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, there. So when this arm is up on a record, that pin isn't doing anything, but when you run out of, when the last record goes onto the platter, this drops down all the way. And what it does is that when the turntable tone arm comes to the end of that last record, it comes over here and parks itself. It doesn't go back to try to play another record. And that's what that's for. If you don't have a pin here, you've got to. Now, there are no parts. There's very few parts for these old turntables. So what I did was I actually had an old chrome-plated shower caddy, and I was looking at some of the rods that made up that caddy, and this one was very close to what I wanted, but it wasn't quite there. So what I did was I put this end of that pin on my anvil, on my vise, and pounded it a couple times with a hammer, and then I tapped it in here, and that really made it nice and firm. So that was a quick and easy fix. There's $0 involved. Made me very happy. So let's swing this around and zoom back out. Alright. Some of you may be fortunate enough to have the trim ring that goes in here. I am not one of those. But underneath that is a little C-clip right here. So you take that out. And oh, one of the things I also finally smartened up, I took the needle out of my tone arm, because when you're working on these, invariably you're going to forget to latch this arm. And you'll go sailing across here and probably do bad things to your needle. Now, what I will do is, before I start, if I want to go to put this back together and start rotating this, I will unlatch that to make sure that it's not trying to put itself on the record. Now, one of the things, okay, one of the key areas of lubrication is right in here. It's a bushing. Mine was gummed up, something fierce. This platter did not really want to rotate, so this had to be thoroughly cleaned and then re-lubricated. Down here, you've got a bearing, and we'll zoom. Well, I think I will. Here we go. Whoops. Still got to figure that. Down here is a bearing. That needs lubricating. I'm not going to pull that off. Now this is very important. This gear right here. Whoops. All right. This gear is very, very important. This is what makes everything happen. When you hit the reject lever, this is driven. When it comes to the end of the record, this is used to drive the mechanism. This was gummed up big time. Not only is gummed up. This part right here, all gummed up. And I didn't do a lot of lubricating on this. I didn't want to put grease on it because I was afraid it would be too stiff. Maybe if you found a nice lightweight grease, or just hit it with a little bit of oil. But the first thing you're going to have to do is hit it with alcohol or degreaser, and that will probably involve you taking this clip off, pulling this completely off, and then you can get in there with, you know, a Q-tip or something. Well, actually that's too small for a Q-tip, but whatever you have to get in there to clean that out thoroughly. Make sure you do get rid of all the old grease, because if you don't, sometimes the old grease has a tendency to work its way past the new lubricant that you put in and cling to the pivot point, and it will be as though you had never done anything, or almost. Alright, so we take this off, and I'll just set that over there for now. So this just comes off. Like I said, this is very important. You want that moving freely. This is critical. Again, mine was really gummed up. It didn't want to do much. I also put a heavier duty grease in this part here after I cleaned it, because it was also nasty. I used a synthetic grease in here, fairly heavy duty grease, just because this is going to be the thing that gets the most use. A lightweight grease down here on this pin right here, and here there's a little pin sticking up. I don't believe that rotates. It doesn't look like it does. It'd be nice if it did. No, I don't think it does. So when you grease this, you also get grease on that. Also important. But let's look at this part here. And this is where you're liable to have your biggest problems. This is your idler wheel. Now, there's something important you need to know about this. Well, number one, when I tried my idler wheel, it didn't want to rotate very well. I took it off, I cleaned it, I put it back on, and it was working better, but it wouldn't eject or reject. It would just sit there and skid. This drive right here would just spin on there, and it just wouldn't do anything. So I had to send this out and get this repaired, and I think at the time was around $30 and change, something like that. So it's not entirely cheap. It feels like, oh, the other thing that's important, see this lever right here? Oh. Yeah, there it is. This, you notice this moves? Not supposed to. That's one of the problems I'm having all of a sudden, is deciding to be stiff. And it's supposed to. Alright. Now, what this does is it pushes this assembly away from the drive motor, and it keeps this tire from sitting against this spindle here, and that prevents this rubber tire from flat spotting. Mine had hardened, and it was really beyond saving. It just couldn't be saved. But it wasn't flat spotted. There was no problem, and the reason for that is this mechanism right here. So so all of this has to work. In fact, I'm going to hit this with a light oil, which I didn't get my oil out. Why didn't I do that? Because I didn't. Alright. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of oil on my pivot points, because it seems to be a little bit too stiff, stiffer than I want it to be. Let's see here. And this assembly has a C-clip. Can we get you to see it? Probably not. Down in here there's a C-clip. And if you take that off, then you should be able to take this whole assembly off. Oh, that seems happier. Hopefully it gets rid of my... And when you assemble it, make sure that you push this over here. That will allow you to drop your turntable platter on here without this getting in the way. And it's where it wants to be anyhow. Now let's see, let me just go down below. Now I thought he'd done a pretty good job of cleaning this, but it seems to be less than happy, so... no. Alright, I'm going to go underneath and lubricate it there too. So maybe that will thin out any of the, maybe the grease was a little bit too stiff, I don't know. Alright, so that pretty much takes care of this top part, except for, if you look over here, if you move this is also an important arm. And I thought that I'd gotten it clean. It looks clean. Yeah. Ah, my hook got it. For some reason it's... Oh, yeah. Now all of these things have to move freely. So all it takes is one of them to knot, and it will cause problems. I just dab a little Greek oil in there too. Oops. Alright. That feels better. Okay, so now this part right here, let me zoom in a little bit, so I don't know if you can, how well you can see it, or if I'm even, is this, alright, right here, this little part right here, I'll show you the flat plate that this is connected to. This, what do I do with my gear? There you go. This, when you crank the control over here to the on man, off man, on reject, there, that's a mouthful. When you crank that control all the way over to reject, this is sitting here and it drives this forward, and then that hits the, well, let's see, it hits this little plate under here, and then it sticks this out. And let's go back out. Alright, so this gets driven out, and then on the bottom of your turntable is a gear, wherever you are, is a gear, and that gear engages this, and then it cranks this around, and then starts the whole process of the whole rejection process, all done with this thing here. And I want to move this up a little bit because I keep going off camera and doing things. So, critical piece, that's important. This is very important. Let's flip it over. I'll show you some things underneath. Okay. Now, when you rotate, this is your on-off, I'll just call it the on-off control, on-off reject man, all that. When you rotate this control, right here is the arm, this is the arm that this is supposed to hit, and you notice there's a part right here that this thing drives. Make sure you grease this pretty well because you want this to move freely because you don't want to overstress that plastic piece. This is the part that when you hit it, well, I'll just do it. Okay. When you hit this all the way up so you reject, you notice it's driving this whole assembly forward. and it's driving this whole long metal plate over there to activate this part here. So you really want this free. This is also where your on-off switch is, and so if this decides it doesn't want to move freely, what's going to happen is your on-off switch is going to stay on and your motor will continue to run. So I've already had that happen, which is one of the reasons why I'm digging into this today. But it seems oh, come on. It's hard to get this to cooperate because why are you binding? I think interesting. I think there's a wear mark on this, right? Come on. There's a wear mark right here. And I think this plate is slightly out of whack. So, how do we do this? Now, there's a clip here and a clip here. You can take this thing completely off. What I want to do is see if I can just persuade this a little bit. Okay. And then shove in on it. Just a little bit. Let's see. Okay, get you out of there. Feels like it's binding still somewhere. Where? It's a weird spot there. So one of the things we want to look for are places where things rub and bind. And then, oops, let's grab this. And try to see what you can to persuade them to stop rubbing and binding. Now, of course, if this had not already been cleaned, come on, then you'd want to take this completely apart and clean it and lubricate it. Let's go up there. Let's see. Oh, this wire that I put in, I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to route it around with the other wire. This is one of my attempts to keep this from oh no, keep this thing from humming. And while it did help a little bit, why are you? I don't understand why that's still not moving as freely as it ought to. Let's take a peek on the top side and see. Wow, come on. That is not happy. I may have to take that completely off, but I'm not sure what might be going on. No, I don't want to do that. I got grease on my roller. That's the other thing. When you're greasing things, try not to get grease on your rubber rollers. They don't like it. Alright. that looks pretty free. Let's take a peek under here again, see if I can see anything else that might be going on. Ah. It sure feels like that's still binding here. Now there. Yeah, I think that's bent. How on earth that got bent, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that's what my problem is. Let me try some carefully calibrated force. I think. Looking forward, maybe I want to use bigger. Let's see here. Let's see, maybe I need to tweak it by twisting. Because I think, well, I don't know if that's going to help me at all. That still doesn't seem happy. Why? Well, we're going in. If I can. I think I need to do... Can we? There we go. Throw that over here. Another clip. Yeah, that made a huge... It's very free now. It's free. Okay, come on. Now why are you not cooperating? Well, I don't see anything obvious, but what I think I'm going to try, very gently, I'm going to try to tweak this ever so much, or so slightly, and because if you go too far, you're going to wind up with this plate on the top actually digging into the... Oh, okay, I see my problem. You can't see it, but I do. I don't know if you can see, where am I? This thing bows. And what it was doing is putting a lot of force right here and preventing this from moving freely. Why for were you bent? I don't know. But it is definitely bent. You bring it down here. This, you can see daylight under that. It's bent. How or why, I don't know. But that is not good. I don't want to go too much. I just want it flat. That seems better. Well, let's see. You never know whose digits have been into the device you're working on. And I could have kept greasing that and oiling that and wondering why it didn't work. Is that gonna... What's it doing? Is it twisted? I want that. Let's see. Is it twisted? Something's catching. Let's see. Well, let's see. I don't know. What's it binding on? Something's catching. What are we catching on? Let's check it out up top side. Oh. Okay. So I think what's happening, yes, that's what's happening. Alright, so here's the other thing. If in the process of trying to fix your problem, you cause a bigger one, the end of this is actually now bent just a little bit and is binding on that, and that's definitely not what I want. So I'm going to have to tweak that a little bit. So, just a little bit. Let's see. One of the things we got to do is just be very careful about what you're tweaking and how much. Because if you're not, well, let's just say that from experience I've learned, you can get into a lot of trouble. Yes, I think. Let's see, let's, no, of course you didn't do that. I thought I was going to get that to stay, but it's not going to. Alright, are we there yet? Let's tweak that a little bit more. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I think I've got that clearing, those two parts I showed you a moment ago. I think I got that clearing now. Yes, looks good. Oh, that's more better. That's much better. That works the way it's supposed to. Alright. So, get in there. Oh yeah. My goodness. Now, I have no idea how that could possibly have gotten bent. No clue. I mean, it's not exactly like it. I just don't know. Makes no sense to me. Alright, but this is an example of how a little thing can cause a big pain in the neck. And what's really weird is after I had restored this, this is working just fine. I know I didn't do anything to it after that that would have caused this, but regardless, there it is. When you're working with old stuff like this, you get lots of surprises like this. And alright, let's see. Oh, that is night and day. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Oh yeah. That is 100%. Having this not right was making this much too stiff. The control up here. I mean, it was working a lot better than it was when I first got this. I was actually doing everything from underneath here because I didn't want to put pressure on that plastic handle. But that is just night and day. And if I have to, I can tweak the upper end a little bit. But that's perfect. Alright. So that was a bit of a surprise. Okay, now this is the on-off switch right here. It's got a nut on the end of these two screws. If you take those two screws out, this whole thing comes off and this cover comes off. And then you can look at the contacts inside the switch. And I had to clean up my contacts. They were not happy. They were a bit corroded and a bit worn. So it doesn't hurt since you've got it to this point, and the two screws are on the two screws are on top here. So with the platter off, it's easy to get to this, take it apart, and take a look at it. Now, there's some oddities about this that I'm not quite sure I understand. The reason this wire is here, I think I need to unsolder that, and I want to reroute this the way the other wire is, because I want that underneath all this mechanism so it doesn't have a chance to get into anything I don't want to get into. But there have been several digits in this pie, so to speak. We've got, let's see here. Yeah, all right. These wires may or may not be in the right place in this connector, and I think there was supposed to be another wire here, because that actually provides a ground. Because you've got this green wire right here, goes to the chassis. You've got this little brown wire, oops, right here, that one that's been cut off. That goes to the other end of this ground wire inside of this. I think, yes. So, so this wire goes into here, connects to the green wire, which is right inside of this, and then gets grounded. This wire originally went to the Morse radio that this was paired up with. Of course, somebody cut that off. I will probably be using that when I put my. I bought an EMI RFI filter. This guy right here. I bought that because when you plug the turntable in, I guess it's alright. You can get buzzing and humming out of this, which I didn't really like very much, so I was not too excited. Now, so you got to make sure all your levers are free. You got this one here. Well, make sure this is free. That's got to be free. Now, I mentioned it in a previous video. I'll show you again. There is a cup-shaped piece. Take this snap ring off, and that piece is the job of that piece. It actually allows the other part of this mechanism, which selects the record size, to function properly. Because that little piece that's on the other side of this has a cutout like this, and this little pin right here. when this arm is being moved, this whole thing is moving. Let's see here. Yeah. So this gear I showed you over here. You can't see it. This gear over here moves this arm. This little cup right here with the cutout in it engages this pin. This pin is controlled by this arm right here. And you have to get in, and you really want to get in here and clean that, because there's a little arm that swings side to side in here. And it controls whether it sets the position of the tone arm when it's trying to, after the record has dropped onto the platter. That whole mechanism, this little finger up here, the arm that's inside this that goes side to side, that engages this, and this piece here, and there's a ratchet. I can't see right at the moment. Where are you? Oh, it's on the... Oh, yeah, okay. It's right here, I think. Yep, all right. So, let's flip this over here. You've got a ratchet right here. Come back here, you. And so what happens is, you notice there are one, two, three ratchet pieces here. And that little white arm controls which one of these ratchet arms gets engaged by a plate that's right here, which I can't show you. And there's a lot going on here, but so since this arm isn't landing in the same spot every time, you have to make provision for this arm to be moved, and yet there needs to be something that will allow the arm to stop. So let me back up. If you're putting a 45 on here, this thing goes in like this. If you're doing a 78, it goes in like this, and then you do a 33, and it stops here on this arm right here, this little plate, which I don't know if you can see. All right, so there's a plate right here. This will engage. It's either this one or this one. I forget which one. But anyway, yeah, probably, okay. Oh, okay. All right, I got it. See this piece right here? Can you see this piece right here? Maybe not. Let's bring you up and then I'll show you. Because I think you need to know about that. Let me set this down. Because that little plate is important. It has to be freely moving. It has to. Just like everything else on here. All right. So this white lever. All right. This white lever, when the record drops, depending on the width of the record, that arm stops at a different position, and it's timed just right so that this will swing forward and it will engage. Oops, come back here. It will engage the ratchet pieces on here. Now, if you're stopping this arm, remember this is moving, and that little cup is trying to move. That little cup is trying to engage the little pin here, and it's trying to rotate this tone arm. Well, if you didn't have something that would give, you would break stuff. So this little cup in here is designed with a piece of paper in there, which gives it a fair amount of friction. So when this arm stops, that little cup will actually move and will allow this arm to drop where you want it to. And this piece, as I mentioned before in the previous video, you do not lubricate this. Trying to see if, I don't know if you can see it. If you go back to my video, repairing the repair, I go into this in depth. This part has to be able to move, but it cannot move freely. If you grease it, it will move much too freely. And this thing will do other things that you don't want it doing. It'll misbehave badly. So, clean this, but do not grease it. I ran into problems with stuff in this area, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been this little part right here. This part right here. I tried alcohol. I tried heavier duty degreaser. I went up to the garage where I had my brake parts cleaner. This did not want to free up. I was beginning to wonder if I was ever going to be able to get, and I sure didn't want to take this all apart. That's a sizable amount of work. So sitting on my workbench was a heavy duty silicone spray. So I thought, I've tried everything else. Let's try that. So I shot some silicone spray in there, and lo and behold, this thing has worked beautifully ever since. Just as free and as nice as can be. So, I did put a little bit of grease in this area once I got everything moving freely. Didn't go crazy. There's a little piece of the aluminum housing here that rides on the back of this, so I tried to feed a little bit of grease down in there once it got moving freely. Just give it a little bit of lubrication. The pivot point for this turntable, for this tone arm, that was not working well either. That I was able to get with degreaser and oil, and then there's a spot up here at the base. I think, yes, there's a spot up here at the base. You can carefully, this is metal, this is plastic, so be very careful about what you do. But feed some alcohol or something in there if this is gummed up. And then, the same thing down here, and then lubricate it. I think I hit it with a little bit of light oil. Let's see, what else do we want to deal with here? Oh, yes. Critical. Your motor. I don't recall if I had to take this apart or not. I'm guessing I did, because everything else in this thing was gummed up. So, if you want to just quickly check, you can put your thumb on the bottom on the armature and then on the top where the shaft is, and move it up and down. Is it free? Does it behave the way it's supposed to? And if it doesn't, you can try. There's two spots. There's a bearing down here and there's a bearing on the top. You can try feeding oil down from the top to get this one, and you try feeding oil on the bottom down here and get that one. And you want to do that, if you can, with this sitting like this, so that the oil actually gets down into the bearing. You may have to take the motor off, or let's see. Yeah, probably the easiest thing is take these two screws out. Screw here, take the motor off, take these two screws out, pay attention to the orientation of this. It should be obvious when you see how the wires connect to this, but if you should happen to not pay attention and you put this together upside down so that these wires are on top, your motor will run in reverse. Now, if you were wanting to listen to records that were backward masked, say that fast 3 times, then you might like that. Chances are you wouldn't like that. So pay attention to how you put this back together, because you can't get this thing running the wrong direction. And so degrease it if it's all gummed up, and then I would try to feed a lot of oil. There's usually some kind of a cushion inside of these, and possibly on both sides. Different motors are have different setups, but typically there's a little piece of felt or something inside here. And I would try to keep feeding oil in there as much as you can without having it overflowing. You don't want that coming out, because you want this to stay, excuse me, you want this to stay lubricated. As long as you can. Oh, and the other thing is this part right here. I'm gonna throw a little bit of oil on that too. I've lubricated this before and I thought it was all good, but given how it was just behaving, I'm not so sure. All right, and that's probably way more than I wanted on there. Stop it. Okay, that's good. So this was all gummed up. This is your speed control. So I wound up pulling this away. And then got in there with alcohol and degreaser. I forget what I used. Once I had it nice and free, had it clean, then I put some grease in there. I also greased this lightly in the face and on the underside of this piece right here. Put a little bit of grease there. And as you saw me, I just put a bit of oil on that just to make sure it stays free. Because you don't want this hard to turn either, because if it is, again, there's a plastic. If you look on the back side of it, this is the plastic part of that knob. Now it looks like they have, oh, okay, interesting. This is just a rivet that's holding this plastic to this metal arm. I'm kind of amazed to see that that is still here. But when I first got this, it did not want to change speeds. It was all gummed up. So that was less than ideal. This plate here, let me think. I think I pulled this loose also because this wasn't behaving very well either. Now there's also hiding under here. This is this part right here. Now I see a spring clip right here, and if you had to, you could pop this out and you can slide that whole. You can slide this whole piece up and out of there. I had to work on this too because and things aren't still entirely the way I want them to be, but this stuff here and both of these pieces did not want to cooperate at all. This piece especially. I had to work on this, keep degreasing it. I did not oil this. I don't want oil there. I cleaned this thoroughly. I put some lubrication down low. I just kept working with this, cleaning it, and then once I had it moving freely, then I put a little bit of oil in there. Let's see. And like I said, this, I think I wound up, there's a screw on the back of this. You take this screw out, and there's an assembly in there. Now, if you don't have to take this apart, don't, because it's a real pain in the neck to get back together. But if this is gummed up and it's not working right, then you're going to have no choice. Take that screw out. This whole assembly slides right out. Pay attention to how it goes back in there and make sure that it's behaving properly before you button everything up, because you won't be happy if it isn't. Let me see, where else am I? Oh, I didn't put any oil on that. I missed a spot. I don't know. I see this is looking a little bit, yeah, sketchy. So we're going to put some oil on that. It doesn't hurt, even though this isn't exactly a high speed pivot point. You still don't want it binding, and you want everything moving freely. And I'm going to put some oil there because I don't think I did. last time. Oh man. Okay. I missed these two pivot points. That's huge difference. You can't tell, but I sure can. Oh man. I spent all my time down here. This part definitely needed it, all this stuff. I didn't look up there, and I missed. That, wow. It feels like brandy new. Son of a gun. Don't miss your lubrication points. I didn't do this one either. As I'm telling you, be careful, make sure everything moves freely. Well, well, I missed some important points when I was doing this. Oh, I feel ashamed. What can I say? All right. So, make sure this is free. Make sure this is free. I didn't check this to see if it was moving properly. The end result was it started giving me grief. What I think happened is I put grease in here, but because this was riding against here so hard, it just scraped all the grease away, and then proceeded to start binding against the bottom of the chassis here, which was less than ideal. So, I'm glad I showed you guys this because these controls are going to work a whole lot nicer than they did, and they were definitely working much better than when I started working on this. Okay, so you notice all this stuff here. This, I'm trying to think. Well, it depends on your unit that this is going into. And this is the first BSR I've looked at, so I don't know if all of them have this connector. I'm assuming they do, but I don't know. But basically, what you've got going on here is, and I think I may have shown you that when I was working on the amplifier that I'm using with this. What I've got is, yeah, this wire had been clipped, and I really needed it to not be clipped. Oh yes, and you notice that I've got a red wire going to a yellow wire, and I've also got a, where are we? Somewhere along the line I know I swapped. Oh yeah. Alright. So this black wire goes to the red wire. So you cannot rely on the color codes on these because you may have an amplifier that has the same colors, but they may not agree with how this is going to be wired up. And again, there's another video on, I think it's on the amplifier. I'm doing a lot lately and I just can't remember. So make sure you know how this is wired, because one of these wires is always hot and goes to one side of this, and the other part is switched, and you want to make sure you get the right wire connected to, because what happens is you've got one of these wires that goes to the AC cord in the amplifier. Power comes in, goes through this switch, comes back out, and feeds the amplifier to turn the amplifier on. So then you've got this wire is hot all the time. This wire supplies power for the motor, and then this wire ultimately supplies power for the amplifier. So you've got to make sure you've got that wired up correctly, or you'll see some strange things like your motor and your turntable will turn on the minute you plug your amplifier in, which is what I ran into. Alright, so I think not only did I get to show you a bit more about what you want to do when you're cleaning this and restoring this, but I get to fix problems I didn't even know I had. I knew I had this. I wasn't happy with how that was behaving, because I would do this and I'd let go of it and it would go, I'll think about it, and maybe it might. But what was happening, what it would do sometimes, because there's your switch, on-off switch right there, and what it would do is, there's a spring here and there's a spring side of there, but it didn't matter. You'd get down about that far and it would stop, which meant that the motor would stay running. And if you have an amplifier hooked up to this, the amp will stay on as well. Neither of those are good things. So, I think, now I've covered a lot of stuff very quickly. Of course, you can back up the video, and hopefully you can see enough of what I was pointing to. It's hard dealing with this stuff when it's all buried and tucked inside there. I did get a manual for this. I skimmed through it. It was mostly a parts list, which now is basically useless because I don't believe you can get any parts for these. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to fix my wire. I'm going to put my platter back on, and then I'm also, I think, going to wire up this, because there's another video. I'm not sure which one's going to come out first, but there's another video where I deal with getting rid of the hum caused by this motor right here. It was causing humming and buzzing, and I got rid of a lot of the hum, but then the buzzing was still there, and it was very annoying. This thing works great. And when you're wiring this up, pay attention to what it says. It says line and load. And what I ultimately had to do is, this little ground tab, I had to ground it to the chassis of this to get this to be effective. Until I did that, this wasn't doing much. So when you're wiring this up, pay attention to what it says on here, line and load. Mine is telling me about DC stuff. This works on AC as well. It's weird why they labeled that the way they did, and it had me concerned at first, but this works beautifully. So if you are using one of these, make sure you ground the case to this. That's the easiest place to get a ground that will make this effective. What else am I thinking about here? This is Schaffner. That's what I bought. It does work. There are a lot of different units like this, EMI RFI filters, and it does the job. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. You don't really need to see me unsoldering wiring and putting this back in its case and all this other stuff that I got to do. So for those of you who are working on one of these, this is all important stuff. Try not to miss some of your lubrication points like I did. And again, I want to emphasize, make sure this is sitting on top of this so that your platter will go down past this. Otherwise, it's sitting there and you're gonna have fun getting your platter in. And also, if you have to adjust this, yeah. So if you have to adjust this, make sure that this is not binding against this, because you really don't want that misbehaving like that. All right. Okay, let's go there. There we go. That's off. All right. Is there anything I am forgetting? Oh, just take a quick look at the drive shaft of the motor. Depending on the condition of your unit, it's possible there may be some rust on there, and you definitely don't want that. I managed to get grease on there. I'm really not happy with that. I'm going to have to... I hate using alcohol on rubber products because it can dry it out. But I'm not all that excited about using rubber renew on it either because this is brand new rubber. So anyway, okay. So if you can, avoid doing what I did, which is getting grease on your rubber tire. It's a bad thing to do. Rubber stuff does not like that very much at all. Come on. Okay. Is it? Alright. I think it's in good shape. I will find out if it doesn't want to be checked. That would make me very unhappy. Alright. So, I think that's pretty much it. Now don't forget to pull these bearings out and make sure they aren't dry and all greased up or gummed up. The turntable. Let's see. Oh yeah, I gotta put that together. Let's put you in there. Alright, I'm gonna try to persuade that. Now when you're putting this on, when you're putting this gear on, you want to reach underneath and hit this. It just makes it easier for that to make that drop down where it's supposed to belong. Because a little pin has to go up inside this groove. And if that arm is out of position, then it doesn't go. And here's my clip for this, and I'm going to use these pliers because they're a bit wider in the tip. Alright. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't like that. I see there. Okay. Right, fine. I see greasy fingerprints on top of my rubber tire. I don't like that either. Okay. Alright. Okay, I think that's done. So let me show you how your turntable platter is supposed to rotate. So I think I've got everything together in here. Oh, one of the things, okay, now one of the things I want to just, oops. Alright. Come on. So what's supposed to happen is this. It's supposed to be very free. It should coast down. It should take a little bit of time to coast down. Alright. So, now, whoops. See, this is why I took my needle out, because I was finding myself doing stuff like that. Oh, that works so much better. Now you notice, well, you're not supposed to do that. Well, let's go here. I don't like doing this. This is a pain in the neck, I gotta tell you. Stop it. And then there, and then there. Okay. So, alright. Okay. I think it was out of sync because of all the playing around I did. But you notice what it did. Oops. It comes up, it dances over, dances back, comes off. If you do this, now, you notice it went all the way over? That's the 45 position. Let's do okay, that's the 33 position. And then there's a 78 position that's not quite so far down, which I didn't get. So, it's working properly now. Slowing, spinning freely. Oh, it's a little bit less free because now the rubber tire has engaged this. When I first put this on here, that little paddle was holding the rubber tire away from this. But now, the rubber tire is riding against the paddle, which is where it's supposed to be. Oh, there we go. Alright, so if you turn this off, then you can test to see if your platter is rotating freely enough or not. And so I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so for those of you who are dealing with one of these, there are 3 critical pieces underneath this platter. The idler tire, idler wheel itself, and the bushing that's in that, the bearing. The gear, that little gear that drives everything, that has to be free, and those 2 little arms that sit on top of it. Those are critical to the proper functioning of your turntable. Along with everything else underneath, if it's all gummed up, you want to fix that. Let's see, is there anything else? So, I'm kind of happy because, well, I found some lubrication points that I'd missed. I figured out what was wrong with my switch, and I got to show you guys a little bit about how one works on one of these. So hopefully that's a useful thing to you, and let me know if it helped. At this point, I think I've told you everything I need to tell you, what I know anyway, and I'm going to sign off. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have good success in working on your BSR turntable. And other turntables are going to be similar to this one. Each company does their own, even within the BSR lineup, there are different models and they do things differently. I actually have a German turntable that has 3 little drive belts, which you can actually still get, and one for each of the 3 speeds. And it does things very differently than this does. Different companies have different ways of doing things. And by the way, this is a good indication that this lever is doing what it's supposed to be doing, because if you turn it on, and if you want to test and see if things are engaging properly, say your turntable isn't rotating. If it will turn this way, I've got it in the man position, by the way. If it will turn this way but it won't go back, that means that your rubber tire is engaging the motor and the platter. If this spins in reverse with you got it in the man position, you've got a problem in here. So you need to look at that. And now, because here's what's going to happen. If something is gummed up, excuse me, and that idler tire is sitting away from the platter, this is what will happen even in man position. It'll just spin either way. Unless, of course, this is gummed up. Then it won't spin at all. Alright, I really, really, really am saying goodbye. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's useful. Hope I see you on the next video.